Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Eccentric Mind podcast with George Hernandez. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Welcome to season 2. We're back. Before I jump into the topic, I had a little bit of a phase where I was scaling my brand, so I decided to cut off the podcast entirely. And I've been deeply curious about it, and we're back. So I'm excited to really just talk about a plethora of topics that I'm deeply curious about. And yeah, let's get to it. So today we'll explore why failure is winning. I'm going to discuss the myth of perfection and how it doesn't paint the picture towards success, why talent is bullshit, and how embracing failure can propel us towards our goals, with some background on a legendary figure and plenty of actionable tips to help you overcome your fear of failure. Whether you're an artist, writer, entrepreneur, or someone looking to unlock their creative potential, this episode is for you. So let's get to it. So, the myth of perfection. Perfection is such a myth, isn't it? Like, what even is it? What even is perfection? And I looked up the definition for perfection, and it's literally a state of flawlessness with no defects. So I went to thinking, well, is it bad to want to perfect your grades? Is it bad to want to be perfect on your upcoming test? No, not in my opinion. Is it bad to want to bowl a 300 as a professional bowler? Of course not. Or is it bad to want your doctor to complete a perfect surgery on you? No, of course not. So there's different layers when it comes to perfection, and let's talk about it. So Mel Schwartz, I've been reading, I read this really good article by Mel Schwartz recently. And in this article, he says something that really got me thinking. And it's, could you imagine looking at a magnificent rainbow and complaining that the width of one color was narrower than the other? So not only would that be ridiculous, we'd also be ruining the splendor of the moment. Nobody looks at anything besides the beauty of the rainbow, or making the same joke that there's some gold at the end of it, right? So something I like to think about myself is, I'm 23 now. And at one point I was a toddler, I was a baby, I was a 5-year-old, I was a 6-year-old, I was a 7-year-old. That kid version of myself hasn't vanished. He's just grown, right? And I am that figure now. I am that 23-year-old man who was once that younger kid. And the way I've been able to overcome my perfectionism recently is I'm thinking back to when I was a child, but I also think if I ever talk poorly about myself, if I say things that aren't necessarily true, or if I'm not fulfilling my own expectations of what I think perfection is, then I dial it back. But then I hear the things I say to myself and I see what I'm saying to myself. And let's say they're false. Let's say they're just dumb. Let's say there's something I wouldn't say to myself normally. I would, like I said, dial it back a little bit more. And I would really think about that 6-7-year-old kid. That deeply innocent, loving, no responsibility kid. And I would ask myself, would I say that to that kid of myself? Because I am still that version of myself. I am still that kid. You are still that kid of yourself. But you've grown. So would you talk to yourself in that manner if it were your kid you? And that's actually been very helpful recently. And even on this podcast right now, that I might be stuttering or I might say some things, but at the end of the day, I'm not going to be perfect. And also the way I'm seeing it right now is I'm only just going to improve steadily if I just continue going, right? So I share a Marcus Aurelius quote, and he says, "To do harm is to do yourself harm. To do an injustice is to do yourself an injustice. It degrades you," right? And seeking perfection is desirable, given that it makes us desirable. Yet the desire to be perfect traps and burdens us with stress. And then I've been reading another book called Fear of Failure. A super interesting book. And I've been reading it on Kindle. Kindle's actually super dope. I actually love Kindle now. And she says, "I thought success and greatness in life were reserved for others. And this type of thinking did nothing but keep me stuck in a life that I hated for a long time." Yeah. And I relate to that as well. There was a point in time where I was overweight, I was anxious, unconfident, hated where I was, completely stuck and lost, 225 pounds, and just a shell of who I wanted to be. I knew I was capable of doing these incredible things. I knew I was capable of creating great content, making good videos, making whatever it is, right? Like I knew I was capable of doing these kinds of things. There was always this deep inner monologue saying that I could do more, but my actions didn't represent those thoughts. But what held me back was perfectionism. I needed everything to look cinematic, you know? If I didn't have the best story idea, I wasn't going to make it. You know, if I didn't have this short film that I knew could only revolve around me, can tell a deep story and this and that and this and that, then I wouldn't take action upon it unless I knew it was perfect. But then when I knew it was the good idea or the perfect idea, I hated what I created because it didn't look the way I had anticipated or the way I thought it would look in my head, right? But not only that, because I was so encapsulated by like YouTube and films that I would watch, I was so deeply embedded in consuming rather than creating, right? I believe the whole topic of perfection comes from a lack of actually taking action and pursuing, right? Not getting enough reps. And that's why I think a lot of people tend to have this perfectionistic ideal, whatever it may be, because they're not taking enough reps. They're not doing more. They're not doing enough. Right? So where I'm going with this is I was consuming all this content and I wasn't doing enough action. I wasn't proactive in my pursuit. So as a result of that, I was watching movies, I was watching YouTube videos, and there was something underlying that always came across to me. And it was the idea that these people that were making these great films, making these great videos, you know, their YouTube subscribers went from 100 to 1,000 in a blink, in a fucking instant, right? I saw that and I thought to myself, that is the result of an inherent gift. That is the result of natural talent. That is the result of something they have that they were born with that I can't possibly accumulate for myself. That is the result of something I cannot do for myself. So as a result, I will not take action because I don't have that. I can't possibly be that way. Right? Which I actually want to talk about something here. If you're beginning to do a podcast, if you're building a business, if you are making videos, if you're writing content, whatever it is, I read it in a book called Hook Point, and I wrote it here. Gouda adds that when producing videos, you should try to be as real as possible. Production value doesn't dictate success on social platforms. Success comes from telling an authentic and compelling story. And why do I bring this up? It's because had I known this prior to when I actually started my creator journey, like, I wish I knew I didn't need a red camera. I wish I knew that I didn't need an anamorphic lens. You know, I just need to deeply understand myself. I need to delve deep into my curiosities, be action oriented, and have a knack for telling a relatable story. And if I can't do that, then I provide value for someone in the need of the thing I have, or not autonomy the thing I have authority in, right? If I know something really well, then I can provide value for somebody else on the other side of the screen. You don't fucking need these great, incredible, high production value things, right? Like, you could become an entrepreneur for fucking $0. You can use Notion, Canva, right? Like, you don't need these incredible things or all these kinds of resources to begin, right? And we get so caught up in that trap thinking we need to be perfect, right? And we think perfection looks like this high production value. We think perfection looks like the anamorphic lens, the red camera, right? The best organized systems or whatever it may be, right? And I wrote down here, you don't need everything to be aligned so you can begin the business, the ability to build a body. You just need a knack to do and resourcefulness to use what you have at your current disposal, and then being able to build upon those things as well, right? For example, when I first started my creator journey, when I first bought a camera, I didn't have this softbox. I didn't have this microphone. I did not have this MacBook. I did not have the microphone on my camera. The more I began doing, the more I was able to accumulate other things that eventually led to my production now. I didn't have this desk. I didn't have, my room wasn't like this, right? But over time, man, you give it years, not fucking days, not weeks, not months. You give it years of time. Then things start to accumulate. Then things start to get better. But you need to be action oriented and get rid of the idea that perfection lies within all kinds of high value, high resources, right? And once again, another quote by Mel Schwartz. The pursuit of perfection limits our ability to be present and literally robs us of the vitality of life. It is unachievable, unimaginable, and frankly, undesirable. So why pursue it? Your time would be far better spent in delving into how to transcend the insecurity that catalyzed the desire for perfection in the first place. God damn, he eats, man. He absolutely eats right there. So instead, be open to making mistakes. After a certain point, trying to prevent failure does more harm than any mistake ever could, right? And this is also from that book that I've been reading, and it's challenge, disappointment, and other adversities are a natural part of life. If you're never given the opportunity to experience them, you are robbed the chance to grow from those mistakes. So learn how to embrace progress rather than perfection. The old James Clear quote, right? Rather than focusing on your current results, focus on your trajectory. Where are you going? Eliminate rumination, embrace the now, embrace the present. Because each time you focus on the future, you rid the present of what is now. Each time you focus on the now, you rid the present of what is now. No more rumination, no more wishing, just be. Now, that's the first thing. Now we go into why talent is bullshit. Talent is so bullshit, guys. I've been having this argument with a lot of people at my work now recently, and it's fucking awesome. It's so fun. Talent is the position, talent is the label that people give others as a result of doing. Kobe Bryant, the fucking GOAT in my eyes. One of the greatest basketball players of all time. Rest in peace, right? Kobe Bryant, in my eyes, the way I see it, Kobe Bryant was not talented at first, right? Obviously, towards the end of it, talent is the thing that he was given. That's the label. But it only came as a result of him putting in more work than every fucking body. You don't come out of the womb talented. You're not naturally talented. It's a result of actually accumulating these things, accumulating this work, accumulating the reps over a set period of time. And as a result, you are talented, right? Let me go back to my example. For example, when I was playing football in high school, people were stronger than me, faster than me and better than me. As a result, I looked around and realized where I was falling short. But instead of thinking that I can fix it with myself with more hard work, I just thought they were born with this specific action, right? Like that they had this inherent gift. And because they did, I thought it was pointless to take action. And relating that thing because the way I thought of it was, well, the only way to attain that is to be born with it, right? And if I can't be born with it, then there's no point in pursuing it, right? In reality, like, the fucking dudes I was playing with were dogs, bro. They practiced after practice, right? They trained before. They went to the gym on their days off. They played when they were younger, leading up to the time they were in high school, right? Like, there were junctions set in place. I was a damn baseball player, fuck off. I was a baseball player playing football. Like, it didn't fucking make sense. So why was had I known that discipline and consistency over a long term equates that mastery over something that you want to improve upon, had I known that, maybe I would have been a better football player. But for the fact that I was comparing myself to other people who were already so well versed in that sport, like, it was unfair to me, right? And as a result, I think labeling people as talented can be dangerous, because a lot of people nowadays think, well, shit, they're so talented. Like, how could I possibly become that talented, you know? A lot of people think it's some sort of inherent gift. A lot of people think that you naturally need to be that way. And I think that's the definition of talent. It's natural aptitude, right? So it's like, oh, it just comes out of you. You're born that way, right? Like, no, fuck no. Do you think Patrick Mahomes is the best football player in the league right now because he was just born that way? Like, out of the womb, he was able to throw 60 yards? Fuck no. Fuck no, bro. He's putting far more... He's going pro. He's literally turning pro. Like, returning pro by Steve Pressfield, and you're gonna figure it out. Like he turns pro, bro. Like, it is what he does. It's what he lives. It's how he lives his life. It's what he bases his life around being the best, right? Putting in the fucking work, putting in 10,000 reps to be well versed in mastery, right? Like, that is how you become talented. It is not a result of being talented before you actually become talented, right? This is what holds a lot of people back, and this is why perfectionism is a thing. Because a lot of people think you need this inherent gift, or people think the people at the top are so talented that they started at the bottom, and because of their talent, they were able to just transcend to the point that they're at now. But they don't see the fucking work that goes in. They don't see the sacrifice. They don't see the grit. They don't see the times they want to quit, right? Like, they don't see that. As a result of just being action oriented, that's what grants that talented label, right? So talent isn't the culmination of what you are or are this way because of how you were born. It simply comes from your determination, your grit, and how unwilling you are to let go of the bone. Now, let's talk about why failing is winning. So I'm going to give you an analogy. First, let me take a sip. I'm going to give you an analogy about Iron Man. So, oh no, my camera's dying. Iron Man from 2008 to 2020. His suit changes in every single movie that he's in. Why? Because every single time he makes a mistake, every single time an opponent or a villain actually makes his suit vulnerable, he immediately fixes it within the next movie. For example, Ant-Man crawls into his suit, goes right in there. Pause. And then in Infinity War, he gets rid of all the crevices in his suit. Like, but you see that in every single movie, from Iron Man 1, from Iron Man 2, from Iron Man 3, and whatever else he's in. you see his constant ability to update his suit, so that way he doesn't have any flaws within his suit. And then in Infinity War, he gives Spider-Man the suit, like a brand new suit, right? And now Spider-Man has the result of 8 years in the making because of his ability to update and improve his suit the more he learned from his mistakes. So it's like that win is essentially 8 years in the making, right? It took 8 years to transpire so he could just give a suit. But like Spider-Man doesn't acknowledge that there's tons of mistakes in that, right? And that's what it is. Like, failure is a means of a slight pain. You trade an ounce of pain for a valuable lesson and what to never do again. What you trade for is far more valuable than the pain that comes from it. Right? Like, bro, I've fucked up so many times, guys. Like, there's times where, like, for example, like I fuck up on a lead magnet, right? So that way I can't get the emails of the people who want the fucking product, right? Like, there's times where I messed up on hooks and had to move forward with what I made and let it be, you know? Like, failure is the only way towards that position that you want to be in, right? Like, failure is the way to get there. Now, I'm going to throw a little bit more Marcus in here. If the gods have made decisions on my behalf, and the things that happened to me, then they were good decisions. Hard to picture a god making bad ones. Why would they expend their energy causing me harm? Hence why those failures are for you. They're for your own good. They're not happening to you, but they're happening for you. Right? So that's here's a thought though. Here's a small thought that I had on my walk today that I really do want to bring up. And I feel like failure has tons of layers to it, right? So failure has, the way I see it, it's like there's two thresholds. So you have a failure tier, and then you have a failure tier that goes from A to Z, and then you reach the growth tier. Once you reach the growth tier, growth goes from A to Z, and then you see success, right? So that's what I see. It's like a threshold for whatever it is. Dang, RIP camera. So it's a certain threshold that you have to reach. So failure has its layers to it. Like, I like to think of it and come to it in like the series as I labeled it. And essentially how it works is from failure to growth, it has its own subset from A to Z. And starting from A, which will be the beginning of your journey and whatever you set your journey out to be, right? Whatever your journey is meant for and whatever you're trying to do. You're going from A to Z. First, you will make one simple mistake, and this is where 99% of the people quit after their first mistake, right? So that's the A mistake, okay? Now, either you quit or you keep persisting. Now, to keep this thing going, let's keep persisting, right? So now we understand what failure A brought to us. We understand what not to do because of failure A's mistake, right? So now I'm fulfilling all the expectations so that way I don't make the same mistake as I did in failure A. So now I move onward, and you know what? I make a mistake. But this time it wasn't failure A, it's failure B. So now I've learned a new subset of categories or a subset of expectations that I need to fulfill so that way I don't make the same mistake in failure B. So now I go back to the drawing board, and now I need to fulfill all the expectations that I had for failure A, and then now I need to fulfill all the expectations that I made for failure B, so that way I don't make any mistake because I've learned from those mistakes, right? I can't possibly have not learned from those mistakes because they brought me an ounce of pain, right? But now I understand what not to do, right? So failure A, failure B, all good, and then failure C comes in. So now I need to fully fulfill all the expectations from A all the way to C, and then vice versa, and then it just continues going, right? From D, E, F, G, right? All the way up until Z, right? But I need to fully meet those expectations of every single failure all the way up until Z, so that way I can grow, right? So what did I say? It's failure constitutes growth. Growth constitutes success. Failure constitutes the growth that comes. Failure constitutes the growth which promotes your ability to succeed. Hence why failure is winning. There's no argument that failure in the short term and in the long term are simply measures of potential growth and success. But you can't meet those requirements without one or the other. You need to begin to lower your expectations when you first begin. You may have the ideas, but the work is what's seen, never the idea. The idea is what's learned from. The work is shown in the way you want to see it, or you want it to be seen. The thought that you had, the business that you built was all your idea. But the people who witness the greatness, they don't see the amazing idea that you did. They see the result of all the work that was put in, right? They see the overnight success. They see that. But that's only an accumulation of all the work that you put in. So, just remember, guys, failure only leads you to the promised land of growth. Once you've grown, then you have all of the necessary protocols, all the lessons that you need in order to start seeing success. But you can't possibly see growth or success without failing in the beginning. Failure is a measure that teaches you the lessons that you need to know in order to see growth, so that way you can then see success. You cannot have success without the failures. And though they're uncomfortable, though they suck, because you decide to embrace and persist past the pain, you're already well ahead of 99% of the people who will choose not to do it because of how hard it is. Always remember, pushing for something that is meaningful will always be hard. But that's why it's worth pursuing, because you will have something that nobody else has but what they wish for most. So I leave you with this. Fail your ass off and embrace it. Embrace the failure, guys. That's it for today. This has been the Eccentric Mind Podcast with George Hernandez, and I'm so grateful to be back, guys. I hope you're all doing well, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a great night.